My parents used my college fund to buy my sister a car and called it a smart choice. 3 months later, I walked into the shareholders' meeting as the majority owner. They went pale. "That's a beautiful car, Emma," my mother gushed, running her hand along the sleek red paint of my sister's brand new BMW. "You deserve this after all your hard work." I stood on our driveway, arms crossed, watching the little celebration unfold. Emma preened under our parents' attention, dangling her new car keys like they were made of solid gold. "My name is Olivia Mitchell, and at 24, I just washed my college fund by my younger sister her dream car. Isn't it perfect?" Emma squealed, her designer heels clicking against the concrete as she circled her new toy. "The dealership said it was the last one in this color. I just knew it had to be mine." Of course she did. Everything had to be Emma's. That's how it had always been in our family. Emma wanted, Emma got, even if what she wanted belonged to someone else. Well, it was the smart decision, my father declared, putting his arm around Emma's shoulders. "Your sister clearly wasn't going to use that money for anything worthwhile. At least this way, it's not going to waste." I bit back a sharp reply. My plans to pursue my MBA weren't worthwhile in their eyes. Never mind that I'd spent the last 3 years working full-time while completing my bachelor's degree in business with honors. Never mind that I'd already been accepted to 3 top programs. No. According to them, Emma's desire for a luxury car was clearly more important than my education. "Don't look so sour, Olivia," my mother chided, noticing my expression. "You know Emma needs a proper car for her new job." Ah, yes. The prestigious job as a junior marketing assistant that our father had arranged for her at his company Mitchell Industries. The same company where I've been working my way up from the mailroom since I was 19, learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. But Emma couldn't possibly be expected to drive anything less than a BMW to her first real job. "Of course," I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. "Congratulations, Emma." She barely spared me a glance, too busy taking selfies with her new car. "Thanks. Maybe if you work really hard you can afford one too someday." Our parents laughed indulgently at her little jab. They always found it amusing when Emma reminded me of my place in the family hierarchy. I checked my watch, grateful for the excuse to escape. I should get going. I have an early meeting tomorrow. On a Saturday, my mother frowned. "Olivia, you work too much. It's not healthy." "Someone has to," I muttered under my breath. But they weren't listening anymore. They were already planning where to take Emma for a celebration dinner. As I walked to my sensible used sedan, I could hear Emma's voice carrying across the driveway. "Maybe we should get the interior reupholstered in white leather. The black is so boring." I smiled slightly as I started my car. Let them have their little celebration. In 3 months at the annual shareholders meeting, they'd learn exactly what all those early morning meetings had been about. What my family didn't know, what they'd never bothered to ask, was that I hadn't just been working my way up through Mitchell Industries. I've been playing a much longer game. It started 5 years ago when I was 19 and had just started working at the company. I was sorting mail when I came across an interesting letter addressed to my father. It was from his old business partner, Stanley Wright, who had helped found Mitchell Industries, but had been bought out years ago when he ran into financial troubles. The letter was a desperate plea. Stanley was dying, and he needed to sell his remaining shares in the company. Shares my father didn't even know he still held. Stanley had kept them as a safety net, but now he needed the money for medical treatments. I should have delivered that letter to my father's office. Instead, I took it home and called Stanley myself. What followed was 6 months of careful negotiation using every penny I'd saved from my after-school jobs and a small inheritance from my grandmother. Stanley was grateful to find a buyer who pay a fair price, and even more pleased that it was someone who understood the company's history. "Your father's forgotten where he came from," Stanley told me during our final meeting. "He's forgotten that Mitchell Industries was built on hard work, not handouts. Maybe you can remind him someday." By the time I was 20, I quietly owned 15% of Mitchell Industries, but I didn't stop there. Over the next 4 years, I tracked down other minor shareholders, retired employees, early investors, anyone willing to sell. Every spare dollar I earned went into buying shares, always through a holding company I'd set up with the help of a trusted lawyer. Last month I had finally reached my goal, 51% ownership of Mitchell Industries. The paperwork was filed, the transfers complete, and in 3 months at the annual shareholders meeting, everything would become public. My phone buzzed as I drove home. A text from Emma. "Don't be jealous. Maybe if you hadn't wasted so much time in the mailroom, you'd have something to show for yourself too." I didn't bother responding. Let her enjoy her BMW. I had bigger things to worry about. The next morning I arrived at the office before dawn, just like I did every Saturday. The security guard, Joe, gave me his usual friendly nod. "Early as always, Miss Mitchell," he said, buzzing me in. "Your father know you're here." I smiled. "My father doesn't know a lot of things, Joe. I made my way to my small office, not the corner office I deserve given my actual ownership stake, but the modest space befitting someone who'd wasted time in the mailroom. The walls were covered in organizational charts, workflow diagrams, and detailed notes about every aspect of Mitchell Industries operations. While Emma had been partying through college and my parents had been indulging her every whim, I had been learning, watching, planning. I knew every strength and weakness of the company my grandfather had built, and my father had nearly run into the ground with his poor decisions and nepotistic management style. My laptop pinged with an email from my lawyer, confirming that everything was in place for the shareholders' meeting. I'd already arranged for several key board members to be there. Ones who'd been increasingly concerned about my father's leadership, but hadn't known there was an alternative. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. It was Sarah from accounting, one of the few people who had noticed my potential early on and had become a mentor of sorts. "I saw Emma's new car on Instagram," she said, closing the door behind her. "Your college fund?" I nodded. Sarah was one of the only people who knew the full truth about my situation. "Your father's going to regret that decision," she said, sitting down across from me. "Have you told them anything?" "Not a word," I replied, turning my laptop to show her the latest company financials. "Look at this. Third quarter profits are down 15% because Dad insisted on giving Emma's boyfriend's startup an exclusive contract. The board's getting restless." Sarah studied the numbers, shaking her head. "It's worse than I thought. You're sure you're ready for this?" I gestured to the walls covered in my research and planning. "I've been ready for years. The question is, are they ready for me?" "They're not," Sarah said with a small smile. "That's what makes this so interesting." The next few hours were spent reviewing reports and finalizing strategies. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Emma. "Dad's taking me shopping for office furniture. He says I need something suitable for my new promotion." I raised an eyebrow at Sarah. "Did you hear about this promotion?" She rolled her eyes. "Your father announced it yesterday. Emma's going to be heading up the new marketing division. No experience required, apparently." "Of course," I said, turning back to my work. Heaven forbid she actually earned something. The rest of the day passed quickly, and by the time I left the office, I had everything in place for the next phase of my plan. As I walked to my car, I noticed Emma's new BMW parked in the executive spot my father had undoubtedly already assigned to her. 3 months, I thought to myself, in 3 months, everything would change. That evening I received an invitation to a family dinner, a celebration of Emma's promotion, no doubt. I considered declining, but there was no reason to make them suspicious now. Besides, I'd spent years sitting through their subtle jabs and not so subtle favoritism. What was one more dinner? I arrived at my parents' house exactly on time, walking into a scene that could have been plucked from any of our family gatherings over the past 2 decades. Emma was holding court in a living room, regaling our parents with stories about her first week at work. And then I told Jennifer, that dowdy woman from HR, that her presentation needed more pizzas. She seemed upset, but Daddy agreed with me. "Didn't you, Daddy?" My father beamed at her. "Of course, Princess. You have natural leadership instincts." I took a seat quietly, wondering if anyone else noticed the irony of praising leadership instincts in someone who'd never led anything in her life. "Oh, Olivia," my mother said, finally noticing me. "You're here. We were just discussing Emma's wonderful ideas for restructuring the marketing department." "Fascinating," I murmured, accepting the glass of wine she handed me. "And what experience are you drawing from for these restructuring plans, Emma?" My sister's perfect smile faltered slightly. "Well, I took a marketing class last semester, and Daddy says sometimes fresh eyes are more valuable than experience." "How convenient," I said, taking a sip of wine. "Now, Olivia," my father warned, his tone carrying that familiar note of disappointment. "Don't be bitter just because your sister has vision. We can't all be natural leaders." I thought about the documents in my briefcase, the shares I quietly accumulated, the changes I was about to bring to Mitchell Industries. "No," I agreed softly. "We can't all be natural leaders. Some of us have to earn it." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation and careful observation. I watched from my modest office as Emma settled into her new role as marketing director, primarily by ordering expensive furniture and making longtime employees miserable. She made Jessica cry again. Sarah reported one morning, closing my office door with more force than necessary. 20 years of marketing experience, and your sister told her she doesn't understand modern consumers because she suggested our new campaign was over budget. I glanced up from the quarterly reports I was reviewing. Let me guess, Dad sided with Emma? Naturally, he said Jessica needs to be more open to fresh perspectives. Sarah's air quotes dripped with sarcasm. Half the marketing team is updating their resumes. I made a note in my planner. Good employees were hard to replace, and I'd need them when I took control. Tell Jessica to hold off on any decisions until after the shareholders' meeting. Things will be different then. Sarah gave me a knowing look. Speaking of which, your father's been asking questions about the proxy votes coming in. He seems nervous. He should be, I said, turning my laptop to show her the latest numbers. The board isn't happy about last quarter's performance. Add in Emma's promotion and the exodus of experienced employees. Perfect storm. Sarah finished studying the screen. You know they're going to fight back when they realize what's happening. I thought about my college fund now sitting in my sister's driveway, in the form of a red BMW. Let them try. That evening I was working late as usual when I heard voices from my father's office. The door was slightly ajar and I couldn't help overhearing the conversation. The board is getting restless, Richard, a male voice said. Probably James Henderson, one of the senior board members. These nepotistic appointments have to stop. Emma is perfectly qualified, my father insisted. She's bringing fresh energy to the company. Fresh energy doesn't make up for alienating our best employees. And now I'm hearing rumors about someone buying up shares. I smiled to myself as I gathered my things. The pieces were falling into place. The next morning I arrived to find Emma in my office, perched on my desk like she owned it. There you are. I need your help with something. I set my briefcase down carefully. What can I do for you, Emma? Daddy says you know all the boring operational stuff, she said, examining her manicure. I need you to redo these budget reports. They make my department look bad. I accepted the folder she thrust at me, opening it to find the marketing department's latest financial statements. The numbers were worse than I'd expected. I can't change financial reports, Emma. That would be fraud. She rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic. Just move some numbers around. No one actually reads these things anyway. The board does, I said quietly, and so do I. Whatever, she huffed, sliding off my desk. Just fix it. Oh, and I'm taking your parking spot. Mine's too far from the entrance, and these heels are Louboutins. After she left, I carefully documented our conversation and added it to my growing file. 2 more months until the shareholders' meeting. The weeks that follow brought more of the same. Emma's inexperience and entitlement were creating ripples throughout the company. Long-time clients were getting frustrated, employees were leaving, and the board was growing increasingly concerned. My father remained oblivious, convinced that any criticism of Emma was just jealousy or resistance to change. He even called the company-wide meeting to announce another expansion of her responsibilities. I sat in the back of the conference room watching, as he proudly introduced Emma's innovative new initiatives. My sister stood beside him basking in the attention, while confused and angry employees exchanged glances. Furthermore, my father announced, Emma will be representing Mitchell Industries at next month's industry conference in New York. Her fresh perspective is exactly what we need to attract new investors. I made another note in my planner. The conference was just a week before the shareholders' meeting. Perfect timing. The day of Emma's presentation arrived. I watched the live stream from my office as she confidently took the stage wearing an outfit that cost more than most employees' monthly salaries. Mitchell Industries is entering a new era, she declared, clicking through slides that made financial analysts in the audience exchange alarmed looks. Under my leadership, we're going to revolutionize everything. I closed my laptop, unable to watch anymore. In 1 hour she had managed to tank our stock price and violate several SEC regulations. The shareholders' meeting couldn't come soon enough. That evening my father called an emergency family meeting. Emma had returned from New York early, her presentation having been cut short when several major investors walked out. I checked my watch. The board is already meeting. They called it an hour ago. My father's face paled. What? Why wasn't I informed? Because Dad, I said, standing up. I am 51% of Mitchell Industries, and the board just voted unanimously to support my appointment as CEO. The silence that followed was deafening. That's impossible, my father finally whispered. Is it? I asked. Did you ever wonder why Stanley Wright shares never showed up in your reports, or why so many small shareholders have been selling over the past few years? Did you even notice? You, Emma, pointed a shaking finger at me. You planned this. For 5 years, I confirmed. Ever since you started talking about how you were going to revolutionize the company, he knew nothing about. Ever since Dad made it clear that merit meant nothing compared to being his favorite. We gave you everything, my mother protested. No, I corrected her. You gave Emma everything, including my college fund. I built this myself 1 chair at a time, while you were all too busy celebrating her mediocrity to notice. My father stood up, his face red with anger. I won't allow this. You don't have a choice, I said, heading for the door. The shareholders' meeting is tomorrow at 9. I suggest you all be there. Professional dress code, Emma, no Louboutins. As I walked to my car, I could hear Emma's wails and my father's angry shouts. 5 years of careful planning of swallowing your insults and biding my time had led to this moment. Tomorrow, everything would change. The morning of the shareholders' meeting dawned bright and clear. I arrived at the office 2 hours early, taking a moment to appreciate the calm before the storm. The conference room was prepared, each place setting marked with detailed financial reports that told the story of Mitchell Industries' decline under my father's leadership. Sarah met me at the door, coffee in hand. "They're already here, your family. Your father's been trying to access the main conference room for the past hour." I smiled, accepting the coffee. "Good thing we changed the security codes last week. Are the board members ready? I'll confirm their attendance. And the press is gathering in the lobby." I hadn't invited the media, but news of Emma's disastrous conference presentation had leaked along with rumors of a major leadership change. Mitchell Industries was one of the largest employers in the region. What happened here today would make headlines. "Miss Mitchell." It was Joe, the security guard. "Your father's demanding entrance to your office, says he needs to speak with you before the meeting." I checked my watch. "Let him in." My father burst through the door moments later, his face flushed with anger. "This ends now, Olivia. I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm still CEO of this company." "Actually," I said, sliding a document across my desk. "You're not. The board voted yesterday." "But you'd know that if he bothered to check your emails instead of focusing on damage control for Emma's presentation." He snatched up the paper, his hands shaking. "This is ridiculous. I built this company. Grandfather built this company." I corrected him. "You inherited it, and then you nearly destroyed it with poor management and nepotism. The shareholders have had enough." "Shareholders?" He scoffed. "What shareholders? I control the majority of shares." "Not anymore." I pulled up the ownership records on my laptop. "Would you like to see exactly how many shares you've lost over the years? How many people sold because they lost faith in your leadership?" His face paled as he studied the screen. "Stanley shares." "But he promised. He promised they'd stay in trusted hands," I said quietly, "and they have. I've spent the last 5 years learning every aspect of this business from the ground up, which is more than you can say for your chosen successor. Emma has potential. Emma has entitlement," I countered. "And she proved that to the entire industry at a conference. Our stock dropped 15% in 1 hour, Dad. 15% because your precious princess couldn't be bothered to learn basic securities law before sharing confidential projections." He slumped into a chair, suddenly looking old. "Why didn't you tell me? If you were buying shares, building your position, why the secrecy? Would you have listened? When have you ever listened to me about anything?" Before he could respond, my office door burst open again. Emma stormed in, followed by our mother. "Fix this," Emma demanded. "I've already announced my plans for the company. I have a vision." "Your vision tanked our stock price and violated SEC regulations," I said calmly. "The only reason we're not facing an investigation is because I spent all night doing damage control with our legal team." "That's not fair." "Daddy, tell her it's not fair." Our father just sat there, still staring at the ownership records on my laptop. "The shareholders' meeting starts in 30 minutes, I said, standing up. "You can either attend professionally and maintain some dignity, or you can make a scene and be escorted out, your choice." Emma turned to our mother, who had been unusually quiet. "Mom, say something." But our mother was looking around my office, really seeing it for the first time. The detailed reports covering the walls, the years of research and planning evident in every corner. "All those early mornings," she said softly. "All those late nights, we thought you were just we didn't." "Didn't what, Mom?" "Didn't think I could build something on my own. Didn't believe I had ambition beyond being Emma's backup." "I always knew you were smart," she defended weakly. "But business leadership, it's not really suitable for women," I finished. Funny, that only seemed to apply to me. Emma's gender wasn't an issue when you were celebrating her unearned promotion. The intercom buzzed. Sarah's voice cut through the tension. "The shareholders are arriving, Miss Mitchell." I gathered my files. "It's time. Are you coming?" They followed me to the main conference room. Emma still protesting, my father unnaturally quiet, my mother wringing her hands. The halls were lined with employees watching curiously as we passed. The conference room was packed. Board members sat at the front, many nodding to me as I entered. Shareholders filled the remaining seats with media hovering at the back. All eyes followed us as we made our way to the front. I took my place at the podium, surveying the room. 5 years of preparation had led to this moment. "Good morning," I began. "Thank you all for coming. As you know, Mitchell Industries has reached a critical juncture." For the next hour, I laid out the company's situation with brutal clarity: the declining profits, the exodus of talented employees, the damage to our reputation. I supported each point with detailed documentation, watching as shareholders nodded in growing understanding. When I reached Emma's conference presentation, she tried to interrupt, but a sharp look from a board member silenced her. Yesterday, the board voted unanimously for new leadership, I concluded. As majority shareholder and newly appointed CEO, I am implementing immediate changes to restore Mitchell Industries to its former excellence. The room erupted in questions. I answered each one thoroughly, demonstrating a knowledge of the company that made my father sink lower in his seat. Finally, one elderly shareholder stood up. Miss Mitchell, what role will your father and sister play in the restructured company? I met my father's eyes. They will be offered positions commensurate with their experience and qualifications just like every other employee. Emma jumped up. This is ridiculous. I am the face of Mitchell Industries. I have plans. Your plans cost us millions in market value, I replied calmly. Please sit down, or security will escort you out. She looked around for support, finding none. Even our mother was staring at the table, avoiding eye contact. By the time I opened the floor for the final vote on my appointment as CEO, the outcome was clear. The motion passed overwhelmingly with only my father and sister's minimal remaining chairs dissenting. As the room cleared, my father approached the podium. Olivia? Yes, he seemed to deflate. I underestimated you all these years. Yes, I said simply. You did. As I sat down at what had been my father's desk, now mine, I looked out at the city full of possibility. Time to get to work. The first month as CEO passed in a whirlwind of activity. The media attention was intense. Daughter's secret takeover saves family empire made headlines across business journals. I gave exactly one interview focusing solely on my plans for Mitchell Industries' future. My family's reaction played out exactly as I'd expected. Emma launched a social media campaign, painting herself as the victim complete with tearful Instagram stories about betrayal. She had to return the BM dog and move back home with our parents when she could no longer afford her luxury apartment. Your sister's devastated, my mother said during one of her attempted guilt trips. She really thought she had a future here. I looked up from the quarterly projections I was reviewing. She did have a future here, Mom. She just needed to earn it like everyone else. But she's family. So am I replied calmly. That didn't stop you from taking my college fund. My mother flinched. That was different. Yes. It was because I did something about it. I turned back to my work. Now if there's nothing else, I have a company to run. The changes I implemented were sweeping but strategic. First, I reinstated the employees who had left because of Emma's mismanagement, including Jessica from marketing, who now headed the department Emma had nearly destroyed. It's different here now, Jessica commented during a staff meeting. People feel valued based on their contributions, not their connections. The company culture shifted rapidly. Merit-based promotions, transparent communication, and clear accountability became our new norm. The stock price responded accordingly, climbing steadily as investor confidence returned. My father made one attempt to challenge my leadership, calling an emergency board meeting to question my decisions. She's too inexperienced, he argued to the board members. She's making too many changes too quickly. James Henderson, a senior board member, just laughed. Richard, in 1 month your daughter has accomplished more than you did in the past 5 years. The numbers speak for themselves. They showed in the latest financial reports, profits up 20%, employee retention improved, client confidence restored. The vote to maintain my leadership was unanimous. After the meeting, my father lingered in the boardroom. I still don't understand, he said quietly. How did you learn all this? I paid attention. I replied, gathering my files every day for 5 years, while you were focused on grooming Emma for a role she didn't earn. I was learning from the mailroom to the boardroom. I studied every aspect of this company. The real question is, why didn't you notice? He had no answer for that. 3 months into my tenure as CEO, I received an unexpected visitor. Stanley Wright, my father's old partner who had sold me his shares, asked to meet. I've been following the news, he said, settling into a chair in my office. The same office where my father had dismissed my ambitions for so many years. You've done exactly what I hoped you would. The company needed change, I said simply. He smiled. Yes, but more than that, it needed someone who understood its true value. Your grandfather built this company on principles, hard work, merit, integrity. Your father forgot those principles, but you embodied them. I thought about the long years of careful planning, of silent work and patient preparation. I had good teachers. Speaking of teachers, Stanley leaned forward. I hear you're starting a scholarship program. I nodded. The Mitchell Industries Future Leaders Scholarship, full college funding for employees' children who demonstrate academic excellence and work ethic. We've already selected our first 10 recipients. Your mother must love that, he said with a knowing look. I allowed myself a small smile. She called it wasteful, said I should be focusing on family first. And what did you tell her? That I am focusing on family, the Mitchell Industries family. Every employee here is part of building our future. After Stanley left, I walked through the office floors observing the changes 6 months had brought. The atmosphere was energetic yet focused, with teams collaborating effectively and projects moving forward smoothly. Sarah fell into step beside me. You'll never guess who applied for an entry-level position in accounting. Who? Emma. I stopped walking. Really? Sarah nodded. Used your father's name as a reference. Want to see her application? In my office, I reviewed Emma's resume. It was sparse, no real experience, no relevant skills, just her incomplete marketing degree and her brief disastrous sting as our marketing director. She followed the proper application process? I asked. Surprisingly, yes. Though she did try to skip the skills assessment, claiming it was beneath her station. I thought for a moment, process her application like any other candidate. If she meets the basic qualifications, she can interview like everyone else. And if she doesn't, then she'll receive the same rejection letter we send all unqualified applicants. That evening I worked late as usual, reviewing plans for our upcoming expansion. A knock at my door revealed my mother. You look tired, she said, hovering in the doorway. You work too hard. Someone has to, I replied, not looking up from my documents. Emma's application, she really needs this job, Olivia. Her savings are running out, and your father, well, his consulting business isn't doing well. I finally met her eyes. Then she should make sure her application demonstrates she's qualified for the position. She's your sister. Yes. I agreed. And for years that was enough for this company. Not anymore. My mother sank into a chair. I don't understand you anymore. Where is this coldness coming from? It's not coldness, Mom. It's professionalism. Emma can earn her place here just like everyone else, just like I did. 2 days later, Emma's application was processed. She failed to meet 3 of the 5 basic qualifications for the position. Standard rejection letter? Sarah asked. I nodded. With information about our internship program and suggested courses at the local community college, like we send all underqualified applicants. The letter went out that afternoon. Emma's response was predictable. Angry social media posts about sisterly betrayal and family loyalty. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on our latest initiative, a partnership with local colleges to provide work-study opportunities for business students. Real experience earned through merit and hard work. 6 months turned into a year. Mitchell Industries flourished under its new leadership, expanding into new markets and building a reputation for excellence and innovation. My father's consulting business struggled and eventually folded. He swallowed his pride and approached me about position. I have decades of experience, he said, sitting across from my desk. Yes, I agreed. But the company has changed. Are you willing to adapt to report to managers who might be younger than you? To earn respect rather than demand it. He stared at me for a long moment. You really have built something remarkable here. That night, as I prepared to leave the office, I passed the wall of company photos in the lobby. My grandfather's portrait hung in the center, his expression serious but kind. Next to it now hung a new photo, me at the shareholders' meeting, taking my place as CEO. Sarah appeared beside me. Your grandfather would be proud of the company? I asked. Of you, she corrected, for restoring what he built. I touched my grandfather's portrait gently. Merit over privilege. Excellence over entitlement. That's what he believed in. And that's what you restored, Sarah said. Look at what it's built. I had saved a company, but more importantly, I had transformed it. Together, we looked out over the lobby where employees were heading home after another productive day. They walked with purpose and pride, knowing their contributions were valued based on merit, not connections. This was my legacy, not just saving a company, but transforming it, creating a place where everyone have the opportunity to earn their success just as I had. My phone buzzed, an email from the scholarship committee. Next year's applications were coming in, each one representing someone ready to work for their dreams. Just like I had all those years ago in the mailroom, preparing for the day I would earn my place at the top. The future was bright, built on merit, not manipulation. Built on earning, not entitlement. Built on justice. Served not cold, but with unwavering principle.